James Clark sat in his office, staring at the paper with the test results. His dark hands trembled, his ears hummed, HIV positive. Those words blurred before his brown eyes. How could this have happened? He was a young internist, just a month ago married to the love of his life, Sarah. They'd had the perfect wedding at Oakwood Country Club, White Roses, a jazz band, 200 guests from Cincinnati's African-American community, dancing until morning, and now this. He reread the results again. There could be no mistake. The test was done 3 times in different labs. He'd insisted on the test himself after he'd noticed strange symptoms. Constant weakness, weight loss of almost 5 pounds in the last 3 weeks, night sweats, subfebrile temperature. At first, he'd written it off as the stress of the wedding and the move to a new apartment on Main Street, but his medical training didn't allow him to ignore the classic clinical picture. James leaned back in the leather chair, trying to think of any possible source of infection. He'd never done drugs, never gotten tattoos at questionable salons, never changed partners. He'd only had 3 serious relationships before Sarah, and always with condoms. Last HIV test he took a year ago when he was admitted to St. Mary's was negative, so he's been infected in the last year. After he met Sarah. From Sarah? But how could she? The phone vibrated on the desk. A message from Thomas Wells, his best friend since college and fellow infectious disease specialist, a light-skinned African-American with green eyes. James, how are you? Sarah still not answering her cell phone? Maybe I should stop by your place tonight. James shuddered. Sarah had been missing for 2 days. She'd left for work on Wednesday morning. He'd still kissed her in the hallway, admiring the morning sun playing in her tight curls, and hadn't returned. Her cell phone had been turned off. The hospital said she'd left in the middle of her shift, around 2 p.m., claiming she wasn't feeling well. The head nurse, Gloria Martinez, a full Latina with a kind face, had seen Sarah hurriedly packing up her things in the locker room, as pale as possible for her chocolate skin, agitated. No one had seen her since. He dialed her number for the 100th time today. A mechanical female voice. The caller is unavailable. Yesterday, the answering machine with a recording of Sarah's voice was still on. Hi, this is Sarah Clark. Leave a message after the beep and I'll be sure to call you back. He left dozens of messages. Sarah, where are you? Please call me. I'm worried. What's wrong? Today, even the answering machine had stopped going off. James opened their messenger correspondence, scrolling through the latest messages. Wednesday morning, she wrote, Good morning, love. I'll be back late today. We have inventory after my shift. Don't wait up with dinner. Love you. He replied, Have a good day, sunshine. Love you. Then his unanswered messages. Are you okay? On my way home. Sarah, where are you? Answer me, please. I'm getting worried. Flipping through the correspondence archive, he came across an oddity. Some messages had been deleted, leaving empty chat spaces. But James, obsessed with technology, had long ago set up automatic backups of all data to the cloud. He went to the web version of the messenger, activated the display of deleted messages. What he saw made him go cold. A message from September 28th, exactly 3 weeks ago. Stephen, I can't date anymore. It's not right. I have a husband, a new life. Please leave me alone. Stephen Miller, her ex-boyfriend. James knew about him. Sarah had told him. They'd dated for about a year, broken up 6 months before she met James. It was a bad breakup. Stephen, a tall mulatto with dreadlocks, didn't want to let go, made a scene, stood outside her house, called her at night. Sarah even filed a police report, but then withdrew it. Stephen promised to leave her alone. And now, this message. See each other more? So they've been seeing each other? After the wedding? What followed was a string of deleted messages. Stephen, stop texting. I'll block your number. If you come to the hospital again, I'll call the police. This is blackmail. You have no right. The last message is dated Monday. Okay, I'll come. But this is the last time, and give me back those documents. What documents? What did they talk about? And why didn't Sarah tell him anything? They'd promised each other complete honesty. There was a knock on the door. Nurse Dorothy Parker, a full-bodied African-American woman of pre-retirement age with graying temples, entered. Dr. Clark, there's someone asking for you. The police? They say it's urgent. My heart skipped a beat. Did they find Sarah? Alive? Or... There were two men waiting for him in the hallway. A young white officer in a uniform with a Johnson patch and a woman in a strict gray suit. A short Hispanic woman of 45, with a tired face and attentive brown eyes. A gray strand poked out of her dark hair, gathered in a tight bundle. Detective Maria Ortiz, homicide, the woman introduced herself, showing her badge. And this is Officer Johnson. Mr. Clark, we need to talk to you about your wife. Homicide. No, not again. Did you find her? The voice treacherously shook. Detective Ortiz hesitated, casting a quick glance at her partner. Yes. Unfortunately, I have some bad news. This morning, around 6 o'clock, we discovered the body of a woman in an abandoned warehouse on Industrial Road, in an industrial area by the river. Identification is difficult due to the specific condition of the body, but from the documents and wedding ring found nearby, we assume it's your wife. We'll need a formal identification. Specific condition? James gripped the door jamb. His head was buzzing. The body has been subjected to post-mortem damage, possibly to make identification difficult. They drove to the morgue in the police car. James sat in the back seat, staring dully out the window. October Cincinnati floated by. Gray houses, bare trees, sparse passers-by under umbrellas. It was drizzling cold rain. Detective Ortiz sat beside him, glancing at him from time to time with professional sympathy. Mr. Clark, I know this is hard, but we need your help. The more information we get, the faster we can find whoever did this. The morgue was in the basement of the county hospital, long corridors with greenish walls, dim fluorescent lights, the smell of formalin and disinfection. They were met by the pathologist, a gray-haired African-American man in a white coat. The name tag read, Robert Henderson, Maryland. Mr. Clark, I must warn you, Dr. Henderson said softly as they walked toward the exam room. What you are about to see may be shocking. The victim's face and body have been treated with concentrated acid, presumably sulfuric acid. We did everything we could, but acid. Good God. Who would do that to Sarah? In the small, cold room stood a metal table. On it, beneath a white sheet, the outline of a body was visible. Bright surgical lights gave it the feel of an operating room. Are you ready? Dr. Henderson asked. James nodded, though he wasn't ready. No one could be ready for something like this. The pathologist slowly pulled the sheet back from his head and shoulders. James recoiled, clamping his hand over his mouth. What he saw couldn't be called a face. The dark skin was missing almost completely, exposing muscle and in places bone. The eye sockets were empty hollows. The hair was partially intact, islands at the back of her head, tight curls like Sarah's. That's her, he squeezed out, recognizing the mole on her neck that had miraculously survived, and the shape of his right earlobe, with a small scar from a botched piercing as a child. He couldn't remember much else. He seemed to have thrown up in a corner. Someone was supporting him, giving him water, leading him somewhere. The next clear memory was of a small office with shabby furniture. Detective Ortiz sat across the hall behind a desk. Officer Johnson stood by the door. On the desk was a tape recorder and notepad. Mr. Clark, can you talk? He nodded. There was a taste of bile in his mouth. I need to ask you some questions. I realize it's hard, but the sooner we start investigating, the better chance we have of finding the killer. When was the last time you saw your wife? Wednesday morning, around 7 o'clock. She was leaving for work. Describe her in detail. What was she wearing? What were they talking about? Blue nurse's uniform, white sneakers, hair gathered in a high bun. She always did that for work. She poured me coffee, kissed me goodbye, said she'd be late. They had a medication inventory after her shift. Did she seem anxious? Nervous? James wondered. Now, in hindsight, it seemed to him that she was. Sarah had been distracted, dropped her spoon as she poured coffee, and hugged him somehow particularly tightly in parting. Maybe. I wasn't paying attention. I thought she was just tired. Have there been any oddities in her behavior lately? She's become brooding, startled by phone calls. Sometimes she'd sit on the phone for long periods of time, typing and erasing things. He paused. Detective, I found something on her phone. Deleted messages. Ortiz pitched forward. What kind of messages? From her ex-boyfriend, Stephen Miller. Seems he's been stalking her, demanded meetings, threatening her. Do you have these messages? Yes, we share cloud storage. Even deleted data is stored there. We need access, and everything you know about this Stephen Miller. James told what little he knew Stephen and Sarah had been dating for over a year. He worked at either a car service or a car dealership. Sarah wouldn't say for sure after the breakup he stalked her for months. Sarah said he was involved in some shady dealings, possibly drugs lives somewhere on the south side of town, in a black neighborhood. In the messages, she mentioned some documents, wrote to get them back from him. Ortiz frowned. Documents? What kind of documents? I don't know, she just wrote, "Give me back those documents." Well, that's a lead. Mr. Clark, now the standard question, where have you been for the last 48 hours? At the hospital and at home. On Wednesday, I worked from 8 in the morning to 8 in the evening. Then I came home, waited for Sarah. When she didn't return by midnight, I started calling friends, hospitals. At 2 in the morning, I went to the police, but they said to wait 72 hours. On Thursday, I worked again from 8 to 6. In the evening, I looked for my wife again. Witnesses? All the hospital staff, surveillance cameras, electronic timekeeping system. We'll check it out. One last question for today. Did your wife have any enemies? Anyone who wished her harm other than her ex? James shook his head. No, Sarah was loved by everyone. Patients, co-workers, she was a wonderful person. His voice treacherously shook. Ortiz nodded sympathetically. That's all for today. Leave Officer Johnson with your contacts and your cloud storage password, and don't leave town. We may have additional questions. At the exit, James turned around. Detective, why the acid? Why so brutal? Ortiz was quiet for a moment. It's usually done for 2 reasons. Either to hide evidence, traces of a struggle, the attacker's DNA, or out of hatred, a desire to inflict maximum suffering even after death. Given what you've told us about the stalking, we'll look into both. It was already getting dark outside. James caught a cab. On the way home, scraps of thoughts swirled in his head. Sarah was dead, murdered, mutilated by acid, dating Stephen. She was hiding something. And he, James, has HIV. What does that have to do with anything? Or is it connected at all? Thomas was waiting for him at home. His friend hugged him in the hallway. Thomas's light skin contrasted sharply with James's dark skin. James, I found out. I'm so sorry. It's a nightmare. They sat down in the kitchen. Thomas pulled out whiskey, poured both of them a drink. Tell me what happened, James told him. About the lineup, about the acid, about the messages from Stephen. Only he didn't mention the HIV. Not yet. This Stephen guy, do the police think it's him? Looks like it. He had motive and opportunity. Thomas shook his head. I can't believe it, Sarah. She was so alive, so... Tom, can you stay the night? I don't want to be alone. Sure, I'll stay with you. The night stretched on endlessly. James lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. On the nightstand were the test results, HIV positive. In the next room, Thomas slept on the couch. Rain drizzled outside the window. Sarah's dead, murdered by an ex who was stalking her. And he's HIV positive. From Sarah? But how did she get it? From Stephen? Dating him after the wedding? Cheating? No, there must be another explanation. There has to be. Friday morning started with the doorbell ringing. James opened it. Detective Ortiz stood on the doorstep with 2 uniformed officers. One, a young black guy with a Wilson name tag, was holding a plastic bag labeled evidence. The second officer, a stout middle-aged man, held a file folder. Mr. Clark, we have a search warrant. Ortiz held out the paper. And a few questions. Do you mind if we come through? James stepped aside, allowing them into the apartment. What were they looking for? Did they really suspect him? The officers methodically set to work. They searched every corner, taking photographs, taking samples, packing Sarah's belongings into evidence bags. They paid special attention to the bedroom and bathroom. Ortiz sat down across from James at the kitchen table, pulled out a notepad. Mr. Clark, yesterday you said you didn't know about your wife's meetings with her ex. However, neighbors have seen her getting into a black BMW outside your house. 3 times in the last month. The car is registered to Stephen Miller. How do you explain that? James felt the blood rush from his face. So it was true. Sarah was dating Stephen. Secretly. After everything between them. After the vows of fidelity at their wedding. I didn't know. I swear she didn't say anything. The voice sounded muffled. We found deleted photos on her phone, pretty compromising ones. Her and Miller in a car, at the Blue Lagoon Motel on the outskirts of town. Want to take a look? No! James shouted out. I don't! It's impossible. There has to be an explanation. Ortiz looked at him carefully, gauging his reaction. Treason is a strong motive for murder, Mr. Clark, especially one so brutal. I didn't kill my wife. I loved her. Yes, she may have been seeing him, but— Detective, Officer Wilson called out from the bedroom. Found something interesting. Ortiz stood up, apologized, and walked out. James remained seated, staring at the countertop. Thoughts rushed through his head. Sarah and Stephen, at the motel. How could she? They were happy. Or did it just seem that way? 5 minutes later, Ortiz returned with a plastic bag in her hands. Inside was a small glass vial of white powder. Do you know what this is, Mr. Clark? James shook his head, though he had a guess. Cocaine, hidden in your wife's underwear drawer, deep under the double bottoms, professional. And it's not street product, highly refined, expensive stuff. That's impossible. Sarah didn't do drugs. Never. Did she sell them? What? No. She's a nurse. She's seen what drugs do to people. She helped patients kick their addictions. Ortiz sat back down, placing the package on the table between them. Mr. Clark, the picture is not a pretty one. Your wife has been secretly dating an ex, a known drug dealer. We found cocaine in her home. We also found something interesting at the hospital. Over the last 3 months, a significant amount of opioid drugs have gone missing. Morphine, oxycodone, fentanyl, and your wife had direct access to them. It's a setup. Someone planted the drugs. Who and why, and how do you explain the missing drugs? James was silent. His mind was in chaos. Was his Sarah a drug dealer? A thief? Impossible. But the facts spoke for themselves. Mr. Clark, let's go back to Wednesday. Where were you between 2 and 4 in the afternoon? I already told you. On rounds. In the therapy department. Can you confirm that? Yes, the nurses saw me, patients. We checked. You were indeed seen in the ward before 2:30 and after 3:30. But for an hour, from 2:30 to 3:30, you were not there, just about the time your wife left the hospital. I was in the laboratory. I was taking tests on a patient with suspected sepsis. The lab doesn't remember you. There's a new lab tech, a young girl from Jamaica, Christina. She's only been on the job a week, might not know me by sight. Ortiz scribbled in her notebook. We'll check it out, but so far it looks like you have no alibi for the time of your wife's disappearance. Motive is there. Jealousy, adultery, opportunity too, and access to the chemicals in the hospital. You know, Mr. Clark, statistics are inexorable. Most murders are committed by loved ones. Husbands, wives, lovers. I didn't kill Sarah. That's crazy. At that moment, the doorbell rang. Officer Wilson opened it. Thomas stood on the doorstep with a bag of groceries, anxious, disheveled. James, what's going on? Why the police? I saw the cars and— Ortiz turned to him. And who are you? Thomas Wells, a friend of James's, and a co-worker. We work together at St. Mary's Hospital. Dr. Wells, how fortunate. I have questions for you as well. Have a seat. Thomas dropped the package on the table, sat down next to James. What is it? What's wrong? Did you know Sarah Clark well? Yes, of course. We were friends. I was best man at their wedding. Were you aware of her side business? What activities? Thomas frowned. Drug dealing. Thomas laughed. His light brown eyes sparkled. That's absurd. Sarah? Drugs? Are you kidding me? She was the most honest person I knew. Cocaine was found in her belongings. Drugs are going missing from the hospital. She was dating a drug dealer. Thomas's laughter broke off. He shifted his gaze to James. Is that true? James nodded. Looks like it. I still can't believe it, though. Dr. Wells, where were you Wednesday afternoon? At the hospital. I was on duty in the infectious disease ward. All day from 8 to 8? Yes, standard shift. You didn't leave? Not even for a minute? Thomas hesitated, running a light brown hand through his short, curly hair. Well, went to the mess hall to eat lunch, to the restroom, to the smoke break, the usual breaks. And the lab? Yeah, I went in, picked up test results for my patients. What time? I don't remember exactly. After lunch, 2 or 3 o'clock, I guess. Ortiz wrote something down quickly. Interesting coincidence. Mr. Clark claims to have been in the lab at that time too. But you didn't see each other? Thomas and James looked over at each other. The lab is big, Thomas said after a pause. 3 floors, dozens of offices. We could have missed each other. Or one of you is lying, Ortiz said stiffly. Dr. Wells, did you know Stephen Miller? No, only from what Sarah said. She told me he'd been stalking her since the breakup. And you never met him yourself? Never socialized? No. Why would I hang out with my friend's wife's ex-boyfriend? That's weird, because Miller has your number in his cell phone, and records of several calls over the last week. The last one was the day before Sarah disappeared. Thomas turned pale. It was especially noticeable on his light brown skin. This is a mistake. I don't know any Miller. Maybe he got the wrong number. 7 calls in a week? All by mistake? Detective! Officer Wilson called out again, this time from the hallway. Look what they found in the garage! Ortiz stood up, apologized, and walked out. Thomas leaned over to James. What's going on? Do they think you killed Sarah? It looks like it. I have no alibi and the motive is treason. Tom, you really don't know Miller? I swear I don't. This is some kind of mistake. Ortiz returned 5 minutes later. Her face was grim. Mr. Clark, do you have access to the chemical reagents at the hospital? Yes, of course. I'm a doctor after all. Sometimes I need them for tests. Acids too? Why would a general practitioner need acids? Because a canister was found in your garage. Empty, but with traces of liquid. Preliminary test showed sulfuric acid, the same one your wife was disfigured with. James jumped up. I don't keep acid in the garage. I only have car tools and old skis in there. The canister was hidden behind the tool rack, carefully disguised. This is a setup. Someone's trying to set me up. Ortiz nodded to the officers. Those approached James with handcuffs. James Clark, you are under arrest on suspicion of the murder of Sarah Clark. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you in court. No, I didn't kill her. I loved her. Thomas, tell them. You know me. But Thomas remained silent, looking down at the floor. There was a strange expression on his face, a mixture of shock, fear, and relief. At the station, James was placed in a holding cell. A small room with gray walls, an iron bunk, and a toilet in the corner. He sat on the bunk with his arms around his head. How had this happened? Just yesterday morning he had been a respected doctor, a happy husband, albeit with a secret diagnosis. And today, a suspect in the murder of his own wife. An hour later, the lawyer came in, a young African-American man in an expensive Armani suit. He introduced himself as Michael Stone, the court-appointed defense attorney. Mr. Clark, the situation is complicated. The evidence against you is pretty strong. We need to build a line of defense. I didn't kill my wife, James repeated tiredly. I believe you did. But a jury needs to be convinced by facts, not faith. Tell us everything from the beginning. Every detail. James told it. About Sarah's disappearance. About the strange messages on his phone. About the horrible lineup at the morgue. The only thing he didn't mention was his HIV status, which was irrelevant for now. Is this Thomas Wells really a close friend of yours? Yes, best friend. We met back in college at Howard. Went to school together, interned together. Was he close to your wife? They were friends. Thomas introduced us, actually, and was best man at the wedding. The lawyer jotted something down in his notebook. I see. You know, there's one detail that confuses me. Why did Dr. Wells lie about the lab? What do you mean? I checked the hospital's security records. Dr. Wells was indeed in the lab on Wednesday, but not in the afternoon as he claims, but in the morning around 10. But after lunch, no one saw him for over an hour, just about the time your wife disappeared. James went cold. You think, no, that's impossible. Thomas couldn't have. I'm not thinking anything, I'm just operating on facts. And here's another fact. Those calls in Miller's phone. Why would your friend deny knowledge when there's evidence to the contrary? I don't know. Maybe there really is a mistake? 7 mistakes in a row? I doubt it. One more thing. Dr. Wells has access to chemicals. He's an infectious disease specialist, right? Works with various reagents, disinfectant solutions? Yes, but Thomas couldn't have killed Sarah. He loved her like a sister. Are you sure it was as a sister? The question hung in the air. James remembered the way Thomas had looked at Sarah, how often he had stayed late with them, how willingly he had helped her at the hospital. That evening, he'd been called in for questioning. Ortiz looked tired but determined. A folder of documents lay on the table. Mr. Clark, I have some news. We found Stephen Miller. I? He confessed? He has an ironclad alibi. He was in Cleveland at the time of the murder, at a meeting with, business associates. 10 witnesses confirm it. So it wasn't him? He didn't, but he said some interesting things about your wife and about Dr. Wells. What things? That Sarah was really helping him with the drugs, but not in the way we thought. She wasn't selling cocaine. She was stealing expired drugs from the hospital, the ones that were supposed to be disposed of. Miller was reselling them on the black market. Why would she do that? Money. Miller was paying well. You have a mortgage, don't you? A loan for the wedding? A new car? James nodded. Yes, there was plenty of debt. The wedding at Oakwood had cost a fortune. But the most interesting part is how Sarah found out about the scheme. According to Miller, Dr. Wells gave her the idea. He convinced her that the drugs would be destroyed anyway, and at least this way it would be worthwhile. Thomas, I don't believe it. Miller is willing to testify under oath, in exchange for leniency in his drug cases. But why would Thomas kill Sarah? That's a good question. Perhaps she wanted out, threatened to tell all, or found out something that endangered Wells himself. We're working on it. And the acid in my garage? Too obvious. A professional wouldn't keep evidence in his own home, most likely planted. So I'm free to go? Not quite. The judge will decide on bail tomorrow morning, but your chances have improved considerably. The night in the cell dragged on endlessly. James couldn't sleep. Thinking about Thomas kept him awake. Could his best friend, the man he trusted most, really be capable of murder? The way Thomas had stayed late at the hospital, the way he'd avoided talking about his personal life, the way he'd reacted strangely to the news of James and Sarah's engagement. In the morning, the lawyer came in. A restrained smile played on his dark face. Good news, James. The judge has agreed to release you on bail. New evidence has come to light in favor of your innocence. What kind? Surveillance cameras at a gas station 2 blocks from the warehouse where the body was found. The footage clearly shows Dr. Wells's car, a silver Lexus. The time is an hour before Sarah's body was found. Was Thomas there? Looks like it. The police had already issued a warrant for his arrest, but he disappeared, hasn't shown up at home or the hospital since last night. James left the station at noon. It was a cloudy day, drizzling rain. There was a cab waiting outside. The lawyer had taken care of it. The house was chaotic after the search. Overturned drawers, scattered things, fingerprints on the furniture. He turned on the answering machine. 37 messages. Colleagues, Sarah's relatives, journalists. Everyone wanted details. James erased them all without listening. The phone rang, an unfamiliar number. He hesitated but answered. James, it's me. Thomas's voice sounded strained. Don't hang up. I need to explain everything. Where are you, Thomas? Never mind. Look, things aren't what they seem. I didn't kill Sarah, I swear to you. And the drugs? The meetings with Miller? Why did you lie? It's a long story. We need to meet. I'll tell you everything. Just not here, not over the phone. Thomas, turn yourself in to the police. If you're innocent, you have nothing to fear. You don't understand. There are some people who don't want the truth to come out. James, you're my best friend. Do you believe me? James was silent for a moment. 20 years of friendship against a mountain of evidence. I don't know, Tom. I don't know who to believe anymore. A beep. Thomas disconnected. In the evening, Ortiz called. Mr. Clark, did Wells call you? No, James lied. He didn't know why. If he does, let me know immediately. He could be dangerous. Are you sure he's the one who killed Sarah? The evidence points to him. The motive isn't completely clear yet, but we're digging deeper. James sat down on the couch in the living room. On the coffee table were wedding photos. Him and Sarah, happy in love. Thomas beside them, smiling. Who would have thought that a year later it would end so terribly? The events of the last few days swirled in my head. The diagnosis of HIV, Sarah's disappearance, the gruesome lineup, the arrest, the betrayal of a friend. Or is it? Could Thomas be telling the truth? Could there be someone else pulling the strings in this deadly game? Outside the window, dusk was falling. Somewhere in the city lurked a man he considered a friend, a man who may have killed his wife, or perhaps a victim of circumstance like himself. James pulled the test results out of a drawer. HIV positive. It was a mystery still waiting to be solved, and something told him it had something to do with everything that was going on. It was a rainy Monday. James sat in Detective Ortiz's office, nervously tugging at the hem of his sleeve. 2 days had passed since Thomas's call, and he hadn't contacted him again. The police had put him on a federal wanted list. Mr. Clark, we have a break in the case. Ortiz looked worried. While searching Dr. Wells's apartment this morning, we found something interesting. She pulled a plastic evidence bag from a desk drawer. Inside was a small glass vial with the remains of a clear liquid. It's concentrated sulfuric acid, the same composition that was used for the post-mortem treatment of your wife's body. The vial was hidden in the bathroom ventilation shaft. James felt his insides shatter. So it was true. Thomas had killed Sarah. But that's not all, Ortiz continued. We also found his personal diary, electronic, on an encrypted flash drive. Our techs hacked into it this night. What's written in there? Mr. Clark, you might want to sit down. I am sitting down, James replied, machine-like. Ortiz pulled out the printouts. Dr. Wells kept this diary for the past 3 years. He describes his feelings for you, romantic feelings. He's been in love with you the whole time. James stared at her, not believing his ears. What? But Thomas isn't. It's not like he's gay. Judging by the records, he struggled with his orientation for a long time. Tried to suppress the feelings. But when you announced your engagement to Sarah, something in him broke. He writes that he can't let this marriage happen, that you belong to him. Oh my God, James whispered. There's an entry from July of this year, 3 months before your wedding. He writes about the plan, quote, if I can't be with James, neither will she, but it has to be subtle. Get him to turn his back on her, and then I'll be there to comfort him, and he'll realize we were made for each other. James remembered his diagnosis, HIV. Could it be? Detective, I need to tell you something. On Thursday, the day Sarah disappeared, I got my test results back. I have HIV. Ortiz pitched forward sharply. What? Why didn't you say anything? I didn't think it was related. But now, if Thomas wanted to destroy our marriage, he could have infected your wife, knowing she would pass the virus to you, Ortiz said slowly. God, what a twisted plan. Wait, there's more in the diary. She flipped through the pages. Here's August. The plan is working switched syringes in the treatment room. Sarah didn't suspect a thing, injected herself with a contaminated needle, just like I expected. Now all that's left is to wait. A couple months after the wedding, James will know the truth. He'll be devastated. I'll be there for him. He infected Sarah on purpose? James could barely speak from shock. It would seem so. As an infectious disease specialist, he had access to blood samples from HIV patients and knew Sarah's work schedule. Knew she sometimes accidentally pricked herself with needles while drawing blood, a common problem with nurses. But then why kill her? I mean, the plan worked. I got infected. Ortiz flipped through a few more pages. Here's the latest entry Wednesday, the day Sarah disappeared. Everything's falling apart. Sarah's starting to suspect something. Found documents in my office about the syringe swap. Threatens to tell James. Can't let that happen. I'll have to take drastic action. We're meeting at the warehouse. She thinks I want to explain everything. Stupid. James covered his face with his hands. All these years he'd had a psychopath by his side. A man willing to do anything for a sick love. What about the drugs? Sarah's connection to Miller? It was a setup. Wells planted the cocaine in your house after the murder. He made up the story about stealing the drugs to confuse the investigation. Miller confirmed that Sarah didn't supply him with any drugs. They did see each other a couple times, but only because Sarah was trying to convince him to go to rehab. So she wasn't cheating on me? No. The motel photos turned out to be fake. Good Photoshop. Wells hired a specialist. Officer Wilson ran into the office. "Detective, we've got a visual on Wells. He's at his lake house in the suburbs." "Assemble an extraction team," Ortiz ordered. Then turned to James. "Do you want to come with us? You have the right to be present at the arrest." James nodded. He had to see Thomas, to look into the eyes of the man who had ruined his life. The lake house looked peaceful, a 2-story cottage with a veranda surrounded by pine trees. It was hard to believe there was a killer lurking inside. The police cars pulled up silently, no sirens. "Thomas Wells!" yelled Ortiz into the megaphone. "This is the police! Come out with your hands up!" Silence. Then a shadow flashed in the 2nd-story window. "Thomas, surrender!" James shouted. "It's over. We know the truth." "James?" Thomas's voice sounded surprised. "You're here? Come out, Thomas. Don't make it worse." The door slowly opened. Thomas stepped out onto the veranda. In his hand, he held a gun. "Drop the gun," Ortiz commanded. "James, I did everything for you." Thomas spoke as if they were alone. "She didn't love you like I did. No one could love you the way I did. You killed my wife, infected her with HIV, infected me. It was supposed to bring us closer together. We would have fought the disease together, supported each other. You're crazy, Thomas." "No, I love you. I always have." He raised his gun. A shot rang out, but not at the cops and not at James. Thomas shot himself in the head. Epilogue. A month passed. James sat in a therapist's office. After everything that had happened, he needed serious help. "How are you feeling?" Dr. Richardson asked. "Better. The antiretroviral therapy is working. The doctors say with the right treatment, I'll be able to live a full life." "And emotionally?" "It's hard. I've lost a wife, lost a friend, found out that my whole life for the last few years has been a lie, but I'll get through it. For the sake of Sarah's memory." "Have you thought about going back to work?" "Yes. I'm going out next week. The patients are waiting. And you know, I've realized one thing. Evil often hides behind a mask of goodness. You have to be more considerate of people, even the ones closest to you." He walked out of the office into the autumn street. Life went on. Wounds would heal. Not all of them, but many. And the memory of Sarah would live in his heart forever. The bright memory of a woman who had been the victim of someone else's madness. At the cemetery, he put white roses on his wife's grave, the same ones he'd used at their wedding. "I'm sorry, Sarah," he whispered. "I'm sorry I couldn't protect you." The wind rustled in the tree crowns. Somewhere in the distance, a bird screeched. James stood for a moment longer and walked toward the exit. A cab was waiting for him at the gate. It was time to get back to life, to work, to the people who needed help. The story had gotten publicity. The newspapers wrote about a psychopathic doctor and a love triangle with a tragic ending. But James didn't read those articles. He knew the truth, and that was enough. At the hospital, he was met with sympathy and support. Colleagues knew about his diagnosis, but this did not scare anyone away. On the contrary, many admired his courage. "Dr. Clark, it's good to have you back," said head nurse Gloria. "The patients have missed you." "Thank you, Gloria. I missed my job, too." He made his way to his office. A stack of patient charts lay on the desk. James sat down in his chair, picked up the first card. Mrs. Johnson, 72 years old, hypertension. He smiled. Life goes on. Outside the window, the fall sun was shining. Somewhere out there, in a better world, Sarah was probably smiling, looking at him. She'd always said he was a born doctor, that his calling was to help people, and he would, no matter what, because that's what it's all about. It's salvation. James opened the card and began to read. A new day, a new life, a new beginning. The story was over, but life wasn't, and there was hope in that. He looked at the picture of Sarah on the table. She was smiling at him from the picture, alive, happy, full of plans for the future, a future that had been taken from her. "I'll live for both of us," James promised. "And I'll remember you always." He took a deep breath and pressed the call button. "Gloria, Bring Mrs. Johnson in. Life went on, and he was ready to move on, with the memory of the past, but with hope for the future. After all, that was what Sarah would want, for him to live, to help people, to not give up. And he won't give up. He never will.